Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. My name is John Shipley. I am your host and beat reporter, and I have been your beat reporter covering the Jacksonville Jaguars for On SI every single day since August 2019, and we are continuing to move forward through another offseason together. As always, you can follow our 100% free 24/7 boots on the ground coverage of the Jacksonville Jaguars every day on social media such as Facebook and Twitter when you follow us at Jaguars on SI. You can also find us at www.si.com/NFL/Jaguars. Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. Today, we are going to talk about Jacksonville Jaguars right tackle Anton Harrison. It definitely seems to me through OTAs, now that they've concluded, that out of all of the high-profile players from the last regime, the ones who are still on the team, because we've already seen them get rid of Gabe Davis, Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram, even some recent draft picks like Keelan Robinson earlier in the week. So they've definitely done a number on, out the kind of big-profile names who weren't like cornerstone players like Josh Hines-Allen, Trayvon Walker, Trevor Lawrence, Brian Thomas Jr., So out of the players, I don't think is, like I've said on this show several times, as you guys have heard, I consider when a new regime comes in that their players are grouped into three categories. One category, guys like Patrick McCarry, guys like Robert Hainsey, guys who the new regime has brought in themselves. Those guys are safe. The new regime got them. Then the second group is the smallest group by far, and those are the cornerstone players. So it does not matter what regime brought them in. Those are your dudes. Those are the Josh Hines-Allens, the Trayvon Walkers, the BTJs, the Trevor Lawrences, the Travis Hunters, even though he's also in the first group. I'd also put Tyson Campbell in there probably. Then there's the third, much larger group, a group that has greatly diminished numbers-wise since this new regime came in, and that is the holdovers from the last regime who are not cornerstone guys. Both of the franchise's offensive tackles, left tackle Walker Little and right tackle Anton Harrison, both seemingly kind of fit in this category. The Jaguars clearly didn't think much of their offensive line. They added 6 new offensive linemen this offseason, 4 in free agency in McCary, Hainsey, and then Fred Johnson and Chuma Edoga, and then they drafted Wyatt Milam and Jonah Monheim. So clearly a situation where the Jaguars weren't high on their offensive line. By bringing in the tackles, in Chuma Edoga, Fred Johnson, they clearly created an environment for the incumbent tackles and Walker Little and Anton Harrison to be pushed. And if I had to pick one thing to say, this is my big takeaway from OTAs, it is that Anton Harrison's being pushed. I don't think Walker Little to the same extent personally. I think Walker Little is much more of a sure thing to start at left tackle, at least in my personal view, than Anton Harrison. But the former first-round pick who had a really solid rookie season, kind of took a step back last year, battled some injuries, of course. He definitely seems to be a guy who, to me, has to win his job. He's not just going to be given the starting job. In his first 2 seasons, Anton Harrison did not face any competition. He was the clear starter at right tackle his rookie year after the departure of Jawan Taylor. That's why they drafted him, entirely to begin with. And then last year, there was nobody pushing Anton Harrison. There was nobody pushing Cam Robinson to left tackle either. I remember, every time I see people say Walker Little has never won a job, there was no battle at left tackle last year. The year before, Cam Robinson was suspended. We're not going to get into this. Is no Walker Little episode, but nonetheless, this definitely feels like for the first time Anton has to fight for a job. And I don't think it's a fake competition either. Like, I think Fred Johnson will probably get some reps here and then with the first team offense during training camp, etc. But I think Walker Little has that job. Even if that is a competition, I think it's less of a photo finish than I think this one might be. But I think there's a legitimate reality where Chuma Edoga is the week 1 starting right tackle for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I do think there is a scenario where Anton Harrison is, firmly kind of watching from the sidelines. And I asked offensive line coach Sean Sherritt, about Anton the other day. You can go find his exact quote and his exact words, on our YouTube channel. I posted all 9 of the question and answer portions that we had with the assistant coaches. And Sarah, he said word for word, Anton's one of the most athletic tackles I've probably been around. And he said he's a strong kid and all that, but he said what he needs to work on is his consistency in his play. He said there will be so much flash in his play, and he will make plays on tape they'll just wow you. Like, wow. Few guys have the traits, the athletic ability to do this. But then there are other plays in his tape where, it's what he called a low play. It's, you want to see that flash all the time, and he wants to see more consistency. And he said he's gotten better with it. He said he knows it. He sees it on tape, and they've showed it to him, and he's working hard to fix it, etc. But the offensive line coach is outright saying, like, hey, this guy has some big lapses in his plays that time. There are definite high points. They're not saying, okay, we have no use for Anton Harrison. This isn't like an Alex Leatherwood situation where he was just dead on arrival in Vegas. Anton Harrison is a talented player. He's put out good NFL tape before. His rookie year, I know he's never finished high like in the pass block or run block win rates with ESPN, but just looking at his pure pressure numbers compared to, his drop back opportunities and efficiency as a rookie, he had a really encouraging rookie season. A rookie season that, to me, said this guy has the traits to become a top 10, potentially right tackle in the NFL, which would be immensely valuable. The Buccaneers had great offensive tackles last year in Liam Cohen's offense. Tristan Wirfs, one of the best offensive linemen, not in the NFL today, but in this current era of the NFL. In terms of height, weight, speed, explosiveness, power, just a pure athletic traits, Anton Harrison to me is by far the Jaguars, highest upside guy. He's their most physically gifted offensive lineman. And with a guy like Liam Cohen, whose scheme does so much in the run game, in the screen game, it's a scheme that a guy like Anton Harrison could thrive in. But I firmly believe after watching the OTA practices that, to thrive in the offense, he has to be in it first, and he has to win the job. So if I had to make a prediction for the offensive line today, that's a tough spot. I think right tackle and left guard are 2 spots that will be determined during training camp. I think Fred Johnson, will get some chances here and there at left tackle, but I just, at least based on what I've seen, I think I'm going with Walker Little as a starting left tackle. But right tackle is a big question. And then if Anton Harrison can't, beat out Chuma Edoga for the job, that creates giant questions moving even past 2025. Because now you've gone from a former first-round pick to a guy who is sitting behind. Now, Chuma Edoga signed a 2-year, $7 million deal with only $3.2 million guaranteed. It's not like they gave him starter money. They definitely gave him maybe spot starter money, but he could also be a guy who could reasonably be a backup. But if Anton backs him up this year, that means that 2026 to me is also kind of a lost year, for Anton. Just to me, if Anton is not the week 1 starter this year at right tackle, the Jaguars have a huge need at right tackle moving forward, because that means that even if, there'll be more time on task for him and he'll have time to potentially win the job moving forward, I think if he doesn't start week 1, that you have to start looking for a new right tackle in the future. And if you had told me that 2 years ago, this time, after his rookie season, that this would be the situation and the scenario he found himself in, I would have called you crazy, because he really did have a stellar rookie year. But last year, obviously, a step back. And then when you bring in a new regime, just so many things change. And, this Trent Baalke isn't here anymore, the guy who drafted him. Phil Rauscher isn't here anymore, the guy who coached and developed him. Doug Peterson is head coach, not here anymore. So there's a whole new crew of guys. He has to make a whole new impression. And we know now what their impression is that he's very talented, but very inconsistent. So we will see what happens at right tackle. But it certainly seemed to me like over OTAs that competition is really heating up. Thank you guys for joining me for today's episode. Don't forget you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all other podcast platforms when you search us at the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. Please give us a review, like, subscribe, whatever you got to do. And you can also find all of our interviews with the assistant coaches, podcasts, videos of practice, and so much more on our YouTube channel at Sports Videos on SI.